So although we are starting on page 7, it's still going to be labeled 9.2 part 1. So if you like to label those little necessities, that's where we are. Letter F, Nicholas II. No spoiler alert, I've already told you that he's the last Tsar. He's going to be the last of the Romanov family. He is going to encounter some problems. And yeah, he never really wanted to be Tsar. I mean, by all accounts, it was like if he had to do a career survey, that was not what he was going for. But when you're born to a line of rulers, that's where he ends up. We're going to see that his people did have some reasons to be upset with him, and his effectiveness in ruling, and his wife, who he leaves to rule while he goes off to the forefront of the war. All of these things.
How did he do that?
He thought that he could salvage. He and his wife really thought that this war would bring the Russians closer together, and those humiliations of the Russo-Japanese War and the Crimean War, and they needed this, it would push them up over the edge if they could seal a victory, whether it was by themselves or with with other forces.
French, they were counting on the French.
Yeah.
To victory.
Well, that's just cool.
Yeah. Best laid plans. But he, and I don't really know, the bigger question of and we're going to get to all this, is not why you leave your wife at home, running around with Rasputin, but also, he didn't really have any military, other than being a czar, any firm military background. It wasn't like he was this amazing strategist.
So he was trying to lead them without
Yes.
having any prior experience.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah. And you'd think he'd figure out that whenever he's away from home for an extended amount of time, things just go really bad, like Bloody Sunday. Come on now.
Oh, is
Yeah.
that where I was going?
Yeah.
Maybe he should tell his guys with guns at home to not shoot people.
Well, this time, we're going to see
Don't
not
open
shoot
the
people,
door.
but we're going to see now they don't shoot people, which allows the people to write. Yeah, so, you can't win for losing. So, the Russian Revolution and beyond. Political control by any means necessary. That's where we're heading. So I'm going to review a little bit of it with you by the end of this lesson. By lesson, I mean by the time we finish up Russian history. You'll be able to analyze the motivations for and the means of 20th century revolutions in Russia. You're going to be able to identify some key leaders if you didn't already know them. Compare and contrast how each leader used methods of political control and the legacy of the Russian revolutions into the 21st century. So, Russian backstory. So where we left off, 19th to early 20th century. Remember, Russia loses the Crimean War, huge, humiliating, not so good, 1853 to 56. So kind of just starts us down this trail of problems. Remember, it's really Russia's problems at home, with the addition, I like to call their failure in World War I the straw that broke the camel's back, and we'll get to that. It's really all of these things leading up to it, and then that one more little the last Jenga piece and the whole thing's wobbling. That's kind of what it is. So the Russia loses the Crimean War, our first backstory here. Then we had Alexander II, which all of this was reviewed with you in the beginning of the packet, and the emancipation of the serfs. So he's all idealist, I'm going to change and make things better. And then what's he get? Yeah, snowball grenades. But I don't know. And then, so that leads, to the creation of the Mirs, but the peasants and the serfs still aren't getting very much. They're still collectively living. We didn't see much change, although I think it's a really significant change for as invested in serfdom that they were. It was a step in the right direction. He's trying to let off some steam. But the peasants are still dissatisfied, not a lot, you weren't running around going, look at all the new things I have. It was kind of just the same old, same old. That leads us into the Russo-Japanese War. So these numbers will start to coordinate with your notes here. I didn't want to back all the way out and go a page further because I wanted to remind you guys of some stuff. So the Russo-Japanese War, we know who wins this? Japan, okay? So Russia has started to see Japan edge west. Whoa, you're just Japanese. He'll just come in and kick you out. It doesn't go that way. They're very much humiliated by this loss. There's some European kind of racism going on there, how hard should it have been to beat some Japanese, right? And so this is where Russia, I like to think of them, kind of, they were turned this direction, like all in this motion, like eastward, we're going to back down the Japanese. And so then they're kind of like, oh, didn't go so well, let's just pivot and turn. And now let's look at an area to the west. Where are they going to start to focus their attention now? The Balkans, okay, towards the Balkan region. So turning their attentions there and on their Serbian brothers or Slavic brothers and coming to their aid and nationalism, and we should be, so they're turning their attention there after the loss.
Some problems for a while.
What?
Didn't Serbia and that whole area have a lot of problems, like up until present, basically?
Yeah, I mean, these problems now have been like a continuation of all the problems going on with ethnic groups in this area trying to be consolidated under one ruler and that. And they're like, wait, that guy, Hungarian, Austrian, shouldn't be ruling over me. I'm Serb, I'm Slavian, so yeah, all of this, and unfortunately the Black Sea, and all kinds of things that people want, it's all located in this region. So very much continued problems. So remember that Japan won. This is going to be create a condition that is going to lead to the Russian Revolution. So this is one of those building blocks. So I would definitely, that's why it's numbered number 1. You could put building block up to Russian Revolution. We're going to have a couple things. And then that, straw, like I said, on the camel's back is going to be the performance in World War I. If you remember, we've already talked about this, the Treaty of Portsmouth with President Roosevelt in 1905. Russia's going to accept Japanese control of Korea. And then had now turned their attention away from the east and are moving towards the Balkans. Russia's dismal showing in the war became a major cause of the revolution of 1905. And many Russians were angry that soldiers were dying in faraway location for a losing cause. So here we go, heading towards revolution. So speaking of the revolution of 1905, this is number 2 in your notes here. Liberalism. Now, liberalism is, when I say growing, we're not talking even close to the growth that it's seen in Western Europe. But it's trickling into Russia. So we start to have some liberalism growing in certain segments of the Russian population over this previous 50 years. And so we know with those isms comes what? You start to ism, you start to liberalism, nationalism, revolutions, Barry, yeah. So, yeah. Oh, you're like going for like a, way abstract answer. So, we have this starting to creep in. This is going to lead us towards revolution. We have some professional middle class emerging due to increased educational. Remember, Russia's still behind, but we're going to start to see movement towards this, a middle class emerging. Liberals are going to include some nobles and some leaders of the Zemstvos. But we're going to start to, and I just would put here, there's going to be dissatisfaction among a lot of groups of people. We're not just going to see, like in Western Europe, where it'd be like, oh, there's the middle class again, or now it's the proletariat's turn. We're going to see the kind of a general dissatisfaction across a broad spectrum here in Russia as we're moving forward. Poor economy and the strains of war. Who does war generally affect the most? I mean, poor people, yes. So
everything bad usually.
Yeah, I guess it's, but definitely wartime makes you feel a little bit more like, wait a second, this cause isn't really affecting us, and we're the ones all dying. Does anybody remember, the massive amount of people that Russia's going to lose? And with my last video, part 4, yeah, millions of people to World War I, 15 million to these Russian revolutions. And so, yeah, they're definitely feeling that significant loss of life. Peasants and the growing urban proletariat and the middle class are starting to demand reforms. Now, when I say proletariat, there's like 3. No, that's an exaggeration. But we're thinking it's still not very industrialized. So just a little bit. There's a couple proletariat. We're going to see that there's a new emerging middle class, but we have mainly peasants and serfs, okay? And then those boyars, remember, that are up here. So we're still lacking in this. We're lacking in that category where revolutions usually start. It's kind of a void there. And so we're going to see that as we move on. A lot of people, if you had told them at this time, walked up to them, you're going to be the first communist nation, psh, there aren't any working class here. There's no proletariat. That's where revolution's supposed to come from, the working people. And so we're going to start to see the transitions that make that possible. Even Marx would have been like, Russia is the last place on God's green earth that communist revolution is going to take. Yeah, there's...
Really funny.
I mean, it really should have been. It was if Marx had a say in it, well, he's 1883. He's kind of in Russia. Oh, that's good. So it's kind of playing with words and didn't even realize it. But Marx would have said Germany, England, one of the very industrialized nations, would have been the first to go because workers of the world unite, and where are most of the workers? Yeah.
Hopefully not France. Since revolution's not gonna work.
If
Yeah.
communists, they have to make it out of their country before they fell apart. Like, they can't do
Man,
anything.
we started, what are we like on minute 7 and we start, well, I think it was minute 1, French, ding, 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 and go. And so we're back to Bloody Sunday. Speaking of revolution, so we've already talked about this, that people are unhappy, dissatisfaction kind of across the board. And so we have these 200,000 people start marching, and they're marching with this union leader. His name is Father Gapon, Gapon.
He sounds French. This is in 1905.
In the bloody Sunday of 1905, January of 1905. Oh, I just want to preface here. If I start to sound like I do not know what the heck I'm talking about, and I say 1 month and then a different month, the Russians are still using a different calendar. They're using the Julian calendar, where we're using the Gregorian calendar, so their calendar's 14 days off. And okay, I've tried to go through here and put both. You really just need to know there's a fall and a spring. A fall revolution and then a spring revolution where things just get really crazy. Because I will start to, my eye will start to twitch. It will, because it drives me crazy. Every time I go back, I'm like, okay, is it 14 days earlier or 14 days later? They're using a different calendar. After all this mess gets cleared up, they'll go to the same. And they don't even just remedy the stuff before. They just say, as of today, we're on this new calendar. So it's just like you lose 14 days into the abyss of time, but that's Russia for you. I don't know. The Julian. And
Are they still using that today, or are they changing?
no, it changes after all of this muck. So of course it has to be through the craziest time in their history that I have to try to get you from month to month, that they're just gonna.
Julius Caesar messed up in the
Plutonian
first place.
calendar. It's the same as
Say Plutonian.
same as our calendar, except all of the months are
Our
the
name
months of
Putin.
Putin.
Yeah.
All of them.
Oh,
And
the months of
replace
Putin.
Sunday with Vladimir Day.
Besides the Islamic world, there's really no reason for anybody to not be on the Gregorian calendar now.
Yeah, I'm sure that they would look at us and be like, there's really no reason for people not to be on the metric system.
They're,
They have
they're,
a different religious calendar.
yeah, they're in like six. Are they
Yeah, 'cause it-
1400 right now?
I always have to go back when it's like Ramadan and things like that and look at the actual calendar, because it's like lunar cycle. Yeah.
They have a lunar calendar.
Yeah, a
Actually,
lunar.
makes more sense.
Well, it's much more standing.
Well, their years are shorter.
But when I'm teaching in that time period, and I try to each day on the agenda put that actual date when I'm in that unit to kind of keep re-expressing it, I have to go every day and look, because my brain just doesn't, shoo. But I take the effort. It's an effort. All right, where's that? Oh, and that seems like a weird transition back to Bloody Sunday. Anyway, January 1905, 200,000 peaceful people. Peaceful. We've talked about this. They are carrying Orthodox relics like Bibles and crosses. And they are singing, I don't know an Orthodox song, so we're just going to use Kumbaya. They're singing a very peaceful, they're marching to the palace to Tsar, we're unhappy, we just want things to change. They really haven't checked his.
The religious people?
Yes, he didn't.
He wasn't there.
So they didn't check his social calendar. He has been gone for 2 weeks. He's not there.
Less competent than Wilhelm II.
He wasn't there, but he didn't really leave. I think if I was leaving town for an extended amount of time and I had a bunch of armed soldiers at my front door, I'd be like,
Put someone competent
yeah.
in charge.
Before you start shooting, check, are they carrying weapons or Bibles? There's
There's a checklist of when it's appropriate to shoot at people. Are they violent?
yeah.
Are they violent
Take
towards
this
Are they
job.
climbing the walls or singing Kumbaya in a circle?
In Russia's defense,
Yeah.
the last guy that was killed
Was-
by
is-
like, you know,
yeah.
snowballs.
Yeah, see, that's a good
They
point.
could have just like
Yes,
looked
the
up the
Orthodox.
Yeah, the Bible.
And bomb
did
in
just
their
read
Bibles.
Yeah,
So,
you know, I don't think any of you are going to fall to any assassination. You guys have got this figured.
And obscene playing cards and all sorts of like
Obscene.
I lost where this started. I don't want to know. So, peaceful marchers onto the Winter Palace, didn't check the schedule. Czar's been out of town for like 2 weeks, so it's not like he just left and they can easily pull him back into, you know, it's not like, hey, send somebody down the street to get the guy. He is far away. The army's going to be like, oh, 200,000 people, let's open fire. So out of 200,000 people, 300, yeah, yeah.
exactly 300
Yeah,
dead.
300 killed, about, yeah, pretty much from what we can amount. I mean, I don't think there was somebody with a really accurate notebook, but there, you know, we're not like talking ancient times. There's a census and deaths and tolls, and so additional 1,000 are wounded, and so out of this, people are gonna go, oh no, you know, like this was just a peaceful group of people, and people could see that it was. We're gonna see mass riots, mutinies are going to continue, paralyze Russia, and by October, so all the way into October, so all the way through the calendars, January, October, Nicholas was forced to make concessions, okay? Remember, he is growing up very reaction, you know, like from the Romanov family, like, God, snowballs, kill it, take, you know, like they have been influenced to not give, he will have to give concessions to this. I mean, it paralyzes Russia for almost a year. One of the largest concessions that we've already talked about when we left off with Nicholas is the creation of a national parliament, or the Duma. And you know, I realized I haven't been clicking, but that's okay. It was only one little bullet point didn't go. Yes. Hey, like, you speak up anytime I don't click. I get so into my conversation that I'm just like, it should go, like it's timed upstairs. It should just click. All right, so this is going to lead us into 1905, the October Manifesto. This is going to be where these concessions are made. It creates the Duma, which is really a national parliament. This is the concession that he makes. He's trying to let a little bit of steam off here. The Duma will be allowed to meet for the first time in the spring of 1906, so it takes about a year to get the first meeting together. It consists of constitutional Democrats, which are called cadets in Russia, who were committed liberals. So we're going to start to see some liberal changes wanting to be taking place, which is a new thing for us in Russia for a while. So the Duma, as I said, I've said it like 3 times, so you need to know it was a national assembly or a national parliament that would serve as an advisory board to the Tsar. So when you first just hear this, like, you are my advisory board, how much power are you feeling that this Duma is going to actually have?
I think it's more like for show.
Yeah, yeah, little, like, I may seek your opinion if I want it. Like, so advisory board.
It's like the parliament.
What?
I feel like it's the parliament. Just
Yeah, it's like a national advice board is really what we have here. Representatives are going to be elected by universal male suffrage, so that is a movement, a little more liberal. So we're thinking about that age of mass politics just kind of hitting a little bit later for us here. We will see some freedom of speeches, freedom of assembly in the press, which doesn't sound like such a big deal when we've just left Western Europe, but at this time in Russia, that is awesome. We're going to see that the Tsar, however, encircle this, the Tsar retained absolute veto. So does it really matter what the Duma passes or gets done? No. Because if the Tsar, I mean, it kind of does, but if the Tsar doesn't like it, it's gone bye-bye. It's not like where they have the power to then check his veto or to come back and usurp it. He has final veto right. And the creation of the Duma, you'll want to note, will divide the revolutionaries. Okay, it's going to divide them into factions, and we're going to see that this is going to cause a greater divide later. So since they're divided, we're going to see the Duma has really no influence. First of all, the Tsar has complete veto control. Second of all, then you've divided the people that want change, and so they're not as strong. Did you have a question? Sorry, I heard.
Oh no, I was just noticing factions like in
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we're definitely having divisions. We're going to see these groups splinter even more. We're going to have like a side versus side developing. Okay?
Have you spoken with like that giving somebody absolute veto is about as good of an idea as that one thing they did in Poland.
Yeah.
Wait,
Like,
what's the one
it's-
who had in
It
Poland?
What is the point of some like?
Maybe if
Yeah.
it's like the smartest person in the world, then yeah, they should have that power.
Yeah, and really, they could have maybe, I mean, it's not to say that he's going to veto everything, but what happens is it splits also the revolutionaries, and so they're really not getting anything done to send to him because we have a big faction. We're going to kind of start to see like almost like the
Breaking up Russia into a bunch of small
yeah, the
that can't do
Jacobins and the Girondins who tried to move things very far to the left, we're going to kind of see a division of like the extremes and the non-extreme. We're going to be building towards that. It appeases the moderates, however, so that little bit of like middle ground, or like we just want to see a little something, it's going to appease some of those people. But it gives no real promise of democracy at all because he retains absolute veto. And so Nicholas is also going to break his word right after the Duma is created, and he is going to dissolve it twice. Does this sound like anybody else we've talked about here? Like,
One of the French people.
yeah, Louis. I'm going to just dissolve it. I called you to meet, and I wanted you to give me taxes, but you didn't, so bye-bye. Yeah, so we're going to see him break, like he's going to call them, he's going to have them elected, and then he's going to dissolve the Duma twice in 1906. And this is going to lead some of these cadets who are elected into the Duma trying to reduce the power of the Tsar. The liberals and middle class continue to urge reform. Now remember, there's not very many of them, but they're going to be urging on reform. And so then a third Duma will be created under Nicholas II in 1907 after he's dissolved the first Duma. He breaks his word, and he dissolves it twice. In 1907, it will be by his choice who can be elected to it. So not by universal male suffrage. So now not only does he have absolute veto, now he gets to decide who gets to be on here. And if you're the Tsar and people don't like you, what kind of people are you going to put on your nice little Duma? You're for people who do like you. So we get a very conservative and sympathetic Duma. Okay, he takes away. So he giveth and he sort of giveth and he taketh away is kind of how it goes here. Repression is going to be used successfully by the regime to weaken political opponents or sympathetic critics of the regime. We're going to see government-sponsored violence. Jews against are once again, going to be savagely persecuted in Russia. We're going to see some of the problems from that. In rumblings then, because people are pretty much like, wait a second, nothing's really different now, are going to continue. Okay? And this is going to bring us up to the other half of the story. So we're on number 3 in your note packet if you're following there, or if you're just numbering in your notebook. And so Russia is going to experience mild economic recovery in this little buffer time of 1907 to 1914 under the Prime Minister of Nicholas II. So Stolypin is a guy that I like to say has kind of what's the guy in bad? Two-Face? Yeah, so he's got on one side he's doing one thing, and on the other it's what you wouldn't expect. And so the first thing he does is he's very harsh on revolutionaries. So people who were promoting, people who were rumbling, he's very much nope, you're not supporting the Tsar, gots to go. It's actually the gallows at this time are called Stolypin's necktie. That's how many, he's hanging all of these people, I think at least 1,000 revolutionaries. And so he's not afraid to let people know, I will kill you if you disagree with the Tsar. But on the other side, so it's oh, what's that candy? Sour Patch Kids. First they're sour, then they're sweet. Then Stolypin on the other side is going to actually start to push agrarian reforms that are going to get rid of some of these collective village ownerships of land. So remember, we've been putting all of the peasant serfs on mirs once their serfdom was ended, so it was really just the same thing. He's going to start to say, there are peasants or serfs out there who are entrepreneurial, who are going to go above, who are enterprising. Okay? And if we let them have the opportunity to be enterprising, they will go out and do great things. I'd be kind of like, so let's say we're collectively a classroom. We don't have to pretend that. So let's say when you came in on day one, I said, you know, I understand there's some really enterprising students in here, and there are students who are here that just, you know, kind of want to get by. But we're all going to share at the end of this year a C, an average grade, because you're going to have those students who are just always going, and you're going to have those students who aren't. And so we're all sharing the letter grade of a C. That's kind of what the mirror was like. But Stolypin's going to come in and say, no, there are people, so like as there are people, several, all of you in this classroom, who are enterprising and would go above and beyond an A if you gave them the opportunity. Okay, so he's going to try to make some agrarian reforms to give peasants, and these are going to be, does anybody remember what the peasants who get to own their own land and thing are going to be called? Kulaks. They are going to get hit hard after all of this transition period, because, you know, they're going to be given this and then they're going to ask for it back. And they'll be, wait a second, I waited my whole life to be enterprising and have my own stuff. So we're going to get a kulak population here. Yeah.
They should be used to being screwed over.
Yeah. So Stolypin, long story short, for his, you know, first he's sour, then he's sweet stuff, is going to be assassinated in 1911. Like, why not, right? Assassination. You would really think that it was going to be the revolutionaries that did it for all of his, you know, Stolypin's neckties, but it's not. A lot of people in most historical accounts would say that it is actually going to be the nobles who saw him as too liberal for these agrarian reforms. I'm telling you, you do something nice in Russia, like Alexander gets rid of serfdom, you know, grenade snowballs. Stolypin starts to give peasants land, taken out. So I didn't read, I think he's like fairly easy. I don't think we have a long story of like missed, go again, missed, go again. We'll get another cool assassination story with Rasputin, don't worry. We'll get there.
Is the Romanovs, though.
Yeah, the Romanovs too. I can't leave them out of that conversation. So he's going to be assassinated between 1911 and 1914. Many industrial strikes and peasant violence is going to occur as a dissatisfaction with the Tsar's regime. So now we're having, because of this economic, what do you think Russia was able to do more? We've had an economic reprieve. We're growing. They're going to get more industry, so more workers, more middle class, the people who get upset really easily. So we're starting to see that grow, letter C there. And then World War I. So we're back to where we left off. So World War I is going to bring all of this unrest and rumblings and unhappiness to a head in Russia. It is the straw that breaks the camel's back. It takes all of these things and it's going to bring us. So put a star next to number 4 there. Russia's poor showing in World War I is going to lead directly to the Russian Revolution. But before we get to all of that, we need to talk about a group of people who are going to be the main participants in the Russian Revolution. So if you have workers growing for the first time in your country, in your nation, those are called what? The working class?
Proletariat.
Proletariat. And so anytime you start to industrialize, people start to worry about what? Yeah, the working class, the conditions of the workers. And so the people who are very concerned with the condition and plight of the working class are? The working class, and you may go a step further and call them, or before this, socialist, okay? So the rise of socialism in Russia. So in 1898, we're going to see the Social Democratic Workers' Party is founded in Minsk. This is kind of like the SPD in Germany, except just by a different title, with Vladimir Lenin, who is a socialist, as the leader. Lenin is going to be exiled very quickly to Switzerland. Remember we talked about that time period of the Russians sending all of the socialists, but there weren't very many of them to Switzerland? Well, when he gets there, then it's like this utopia of socialism, and he learns all these new things, and he gets involved in it. And Marx is dead in 1883, so he's going to become like, you know, the apostle of socialism. So Lenin will become the heir to Marx and socialist thought. We're going to see the socialists are going to become our intellectual and organizational force behind the revolution. In fact, Vladimir rises so quickly in Switzerland that then he's like sent to Siberia after that. But maintaining his socialist thought, he's going to be the heir to Marxism, heir to Marx. However, he has some very fundamental differences with Marx. It would be an error to say, like in an FRQ or something, that he just took over where Marx left off and they were similar in all of their doctrines, because they are not. Lenin is going to have really what you would say, oh, that slide goes really slow. So World War I, pause there. I don't know why. Okay, so World War I, we're coming back to that. I hope I duplicated that slide to come back. So we'll come back, don't worry. All right, so rise of socialism, Vladimir Lenin, heir to Marx. So here are his 3 basic ideas, which landed on number 2 of your note guide here. 3 basic ideas central to Lenin's philosophy. He believed that capitalism could be destroyed only by violent revolution. So is that like Marx or not like Marx?
Not like much.
Well, it would fall, but workers of the world unite, like that there would, that there'd have to be a revolution of some kind. So he's in agreement there.
But Marx thought it would be more
Of a natural progression, yeah. And so,
Marx wasn't advocating like
no, instantaneous violence, no. He really thought, so it's this one I put is kind of a neutral point here, that it can go both ways. They agree sort of that some kind of revolution has to happen, but Lenin is going to say that it has to be violent revolution, okay, that you're going to have people rising up, and he is going to denounce revisionism, okay, so that we had talked about. So he agrees with Marx on this, that revisionism, remember those people that were just like, well, with the democratic process and all of us being able to vote, we will now be able to get what we want slowly and surely. He's going to agree with Marx in this, that no, that's not enough. Some kind of revolution has to happen. Second tenet here, socialist revolution was possible under certain conditions, even in a relatively backward Russia. This is different than Marx. Marx would have said that it would start with the workers of the world and it would start in very industrialized places. Lenin is going to say that it can start anywhere under certain conditions. Peasants, which is we have a ton of them in Russia, are poor, and they therefore have potential for revolutionaries. So it doesn't have to just be the working class, which we have like, what, 3 of them now? But it doesn't have to be them. It can happen with other people. So he disagrees with Marx here. And then his third tenet here, his third idea, that you have to have a necessity is a highly disciplined workers' party. So he's going to say you have to have the Social Democratic Workers' Party, strictly controlled by a dedicated elite of intellectuals and full-time revolutionaries. So is this agreeing with Marx or disagreeing with Marx? That all you have to have is a small elite group that are dedicated. Different.
Totally different.
Yeah, because who would Marx say needs to band together to start the workers of the world, not this elite little class who have the time to devote their whole life to revolution. So this is the biggest difference between Marx here, is that you just need a dedicated elite of intellectuals, is what Lenin would say. This constitutes the most major difference with Marx, who believes in a revolution controlled by the workers. So this is going to equal a big debate among a lot of socialists that are, already, they've been following the tenets of Marx, but now Lenin is going to, provide these new kind of twists and turns here. I want to give you a little bit of Lenin's background here. He really wasn't quite as much of a radical revolution socialist kind of guy until his brother is actually killed by the regime of Alexander I. And what? Yeah. And he becomes radicalized by this event. There's pretty good evidence that his brother was not guilty of the charges brought against him. And so he's like, I don't like the kind of control that the Tsar has. And so he does have kind of we talked about Louis' little trauma and let him have his little whininess. We need to say that Lenin had a very devastating event happen in his childhood. He lost his brother. Anyway, just a side note there. There's my side story. And so we're going to stop, and this is where I ended so perfectly with block 3A. Because we have 9 minutes left, I want to give you your QD. We're going to stop on letter B. So in 1898 to 1903, we're going to see that the Social Democrats end up splitting into two significant factions, so they divide. We've already previewed that that's coming, so that shouldn't be a surprise. And it's going to be these two factions fighting it out that are going to lead us into our crazy, crazy part of the revolutions. 1905 ain't nothing until you look at 1917. So, heading there. Stop the recording here. You can label part 2 at letter B right there if you like to keep track of that sort of stuff.